Hi, everyone. This week's readings, as we know, focused on Sanford Meisner and the Meisner technique. And I have to admit that this was one of the more difficult methods for me to fully understand. I felt like some of the concepts were much more advanced than the previous methods we've studied. While I understood the overall philosophy, I had a harder time picturing beginning high school students working through some of the more detailed exercises. That being said, I did come away with several ideas that I think are really valuable, especially from the perspective of directing high school theater. One of the biggest takeaways for me was Meisner's emphasis on action instead of emotion. One quote that really stood out to me was on page 148, and it says, "The emphasis on doing or action as opposed to the expression of emotion is the primary characteristic that differentiates Meisner's work." I like this because I think a lot of young actors believe their job is to make themselves feel emotional. Meisner shifts that focus completely. Instead of worrying about what you're feeling, you're trying to accomplish something with the other person on stage. Reading these chapters helped me reinforce why that approach creates more believable performances. Another quote that I really liked came from the chapter about the neighborhood playhouse, and on page 291. And it says that Meisner developed techniques which stressed truthful, believable behavior above all. That quote really resonated with me because it lines up with something I tell my students all the time. I always remind them that our goal is to take the audience on an adventure with us, to let them escape the real world for a couple of hours. The only way we can do that is if the audience believes us. It doesn't matter if you're playing an ordinary high school student or a completely outrageous character. Your performance still has to feel honest and believable. I think that's why Meisner's emphasis on truthful behavior stood out to me. When actors commit to that honesty, it is much easier for the audience to get swept up in the story. Lastly, the last takeaway that stood out to me was how Meisner viewed imagination. On page 292, it says, "He did not discount the power of emotional memory. He merely thought that imagination was more dependable." I actually found that interesting because after spending the last couple of weeks learning about Strasbourg and Alder, Adler, 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 sorry, I expected Meisner to be completely different. Instead, I realized there was more overlap than I originally thought. While each teacher's approach to actor training is different, they all seem to recognize that imagination plays an important role in creating truthful performances. I think that's especially encouraging for high school students because they simply haven't lived enough life to personally experience everything their characters go through. Imagination gives them a way to create honest performances without relying on their own experiences. Overall, I still think Meisner's technique is probably the most challenging method we've studied so far, but I do think his philosophy has a lot to offer. His focus on listening, truthful behavior, and the pursuing of an object instead of trying to manufacture emotion are all an idea I can apply in my own rehearsals. As I said in previous weeks, this course has reminded me that there isn't one perfect acting method. I think more I know, my job is to give students a variety of tools they can draw from as they continue to grow as performers. And with that, yeah, those would be my takeaways for this week. Thank you.